Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs, and welcome to episode 21 of my photography, Lightroom and Photoshop tips. This is our fourth episode on time-lapse. And last week, I showed you how to take out the flickering effect that you see on time-lapse, on how to start warm and finish cold, or how to start cold and finish warm, or how to start bright and finish dark. This week, we're going to look at how to do time-lapse retouching with manual shooting. Because with manual shooting, you get less flickering and you get a more realistic result. Let me show you how. Alright guys, so today a little more advanced tutorial on using LR time-lapse software. It's the fourth tutorial on that subject and will be the last. This time I'm going to use the full version, the paid version of Lightroom's time-lapse, which I think is a really amazing software, and I encourage you to purchase it. Now, let me explain you, Gunther, who made the software, created a book where he explains that the best to do time-lapse is to shoot manual instead of shooting the AV mode. Now, a little note about that. You see, the advantage that you have when you shoot AV mode is that, for example, if you take a sunset, as the sun is coming down and as things is getting darker, every time the camera is going to compensate for that and make your shutter speed a bit longer so that there is more light coming into the camera so you get a proper exposure on every shot. On theory, this is cool. However, in the practical, what happens is that, let's say you have a cloud that's a bit darker or a bit stronger, as the camera on AV mode on every shot is re-evaluating the shutter speed because you have set the aperture, it can vary and it can create that some shots is not a lot brighter than other or a lot darker than other. And the result is when you do your time-lapse, you have what we call flickering. Now, I must say that as the camera gets stronger and better, the latest camera, the AV mode is a lot better than the old cameras. So it gets less and less. So the professional way to do it is to shoot manual to avoid the flickering. Also, the other problem with the AV mode is that as the camera is going to compensate for what it sees. As it gets darker, shutter speed gets longer and longer and longer, but you see it never goes black, it never goes into the night, because every time, you know how it is, you're in AV mode and you take a photo of a sunset and it's a lot brighter on your camera than it is in real life. That's because the computer in a camera compensated that and made that photo brighter. By shooting manual, you have the same exposure on every single photo. The problem is that as the scene gets darker and darker, at one point you won't be able to register anything, because the scene is going to go darker. So the way to go about it, and that's Gunther's advice, is that when it gets too dark, like I usually go up to -1.1 as on the aperture. Yeah, I go -1.1 max, and when I'm at 1.1, what I do is that I make the shutter speed very fast between my two next shots. I make a shot usually every 5 seconds. So when I see it gets too dark, I open the shutter speed. I increase the shutter speed until my metering is back, not at -1.1, but is back at 0. So, and I do that about whenever it gets to -1.5 on on the exposure, I put it back to 0. So I try to do it like 2 or 3 times max during one time lapse. So let me see if I can. I'll show you. You will understand a bit more during this process. So everything has been shot manual. I just have changed the exposure 2-3 times while doing the time lapse. So let's jump into the LR time lapse and let's first click on initialize, which I repeat, what this is doing is basically what I understand it's doing is basically making empty XMP files. XMP files are the files which are external to your raw files containing all the retouching we're going to be doing. Okay, then this software is very well made. All you have to do is follow the workflow here. So next we're going to define a reference area. It says click and drag inside the preview panel to define an area that reflects a characteristical brightness trend of your sequence. On this type of sequence, what I usually do is I just make a rectangle like this so that it has, half of the city and half of the sky. That's my way of working because, that would give a good idea of the overall exposure. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press the keyframe wizard, because this is the paid version. I actually bought the software and I really encourage you to do it. It's about 80 or 19 euros. It's really good. If you're serious into time-lapse, you must purchase that software. Okay, and one of the options you get, two main things that you get from purchasing the software is that you can do time-lapse which are over 400 photos, which is good, to make longer time-lapse, and you have this keyframe wizard. And this is amazing. What that does, it's basically, you see, this is my exposure. That's every time I jumped into, I changed my shutter speed 2 times, to make it longer. So, it was getting dark, and then I changed the exposure and I went up, and then it was getting dark, and I changed my exposure and put it back to 0, as I explained you. So I changed it twice, so that, because otherwise, I am in manual mode, I would just get into too much darkness. So, and the keyword wizard, what it's doing is that it's putting keywords, keyframes, sorry, not keywords, keyframe on these 2 jumps, okay, and it's putting other keyframes there. This is the jump keyframes, and this is what he calls the interval keyframes. So now all we have to do is click on XMP save, and it's going to basically do nothing else but create these keyframes. Now we go back into Lightroom. Let me go into grid mode. Gunther said it's better to do it in grid mode, so I'm going to follow his instructions. So here I'm in grid mode, right click, and I'm going to metadata and read metadata from files. All that's going to do is basically read and put stars. Basically it's going to put 2 types of rating. It's going to put 1-star rating on all what he calls the intermediate keyframes. Basically, it's the first keyframe and the last keyframe, and sometimes a bit in the middle if you want to adjust things. And then he's going to put what they call the Holy Grail keyframes. That's just what I show you. The Holy Grail keyframes is just the keyframes here. We only have 2, and that's when you have a jump in exposure, because that's really the professional way of doing it. So now the task is completed, so I can just filter and put 1 star or higher. Voila, and we get these 8 photos. Okay, let me go back into full mode. Now, this is just the first photo, and this is an interval keyframe that the software has put. And so let's just start as I do usually. I'm gonna retouch this photo, so I'm gonna open up the shadows. Now, when you do time-lapse, it's good that these settings, you don't push them too much, not like this at +100. Try to not go over 50. So that's kind of cool. Highlight, same thing. I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to press on the Option key and bring my white up until I see some pixels. Not much more than this. Bring my blacks. Okay. Bring up the clarity so that we see a bit more what's going on there. And let's change the white balance to, well, shade. Let's do shade. Yeah, I like shade. I like what shade is doing on the bottom. I don't like what shade is doing on the top. So let me click on this. And by default, Gunther created 2 ND filters which are empty. 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. So I'm going to go on the one on the top here. Oops. If you don't mind. Come on. Go. Let me close this. Let's go back. I don't know what's going on. Okay, let's take. Okay, and all I'm going to do is change the white balance for the sky. I want to make this a little bit more blue so that we have like a warm in the back. Actually, I could even do the opposite here. Click on the on the bottom filter and make this a bit warmer. I like the idea of having the top, which is a bit warm, and the top which is a bit cold. Let me just get back the one from the top here. I don't know why I cannot grab it. Ooh, he doesn't want to grab it. Okay, that's fine. Then I just close. I think I went a bit too blue, so I'm going to back it down a bit. Okay, so that's about it. Maybe add a bit of contrast. Maybe open up the shadows just a little bit more. Okay. All right, I kind of like that. Let's see if we can maybe do some other things like unable profile correction. That could be cool. And let's do a bit of noise reduction, not much, a bit of sharpening. Okay, and let's do what? Let's do some post-crop vignetting so we get more attention in the middle. And I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna see what camera landscape as camera calibration does. Ooh, it makes things a bit more saturated. I kind of like that. Okay, so I'm happy with the retouch of my first photo. Then, now here's the trick when you do this holy grail thing. My next keyframe is a 1-star keyframe. So it's just an interval keyframe, which is, this is number 22, this is number 108. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press Command-Shift-C. That would be Control-Shift-C on Windows. And here's the copy settings. I'm going to select check all and copy. So it's just, you know, Command-C, Command-V, you know that. So this time it's Command-Shift-C. Okay, then I'm going to take the second one and I'm just going to do Command-Shift-V. What that's going to do is that it's going to copy all I've done so far on that photo. Okay, so beautiful. Same retouching, you see how it's darker, but that's fine. We're getting into the night, so I'm not going to do anything on that. Then I'm going to go on to the next one. And I still have in memory the settings from the first one, so I'm going to press Command-Shift-V to copy my settings. Okay, perfect. We're getting darker into the night, but I still have kind of like what's happening. You know, it's getting ooh, really, yeah, maybe, no, I'm just going to, yeah, maybe make it a bit brighter. Not much, but just a little bit like that, okay? So we don't get too much into the night. And then I'm gonna, so now that I've changed something, I'm gonna do Command-Shift-C to take back my settings, to copying them back in memory. Then I'm gonna go into the next photo. Now the next photo, this is a 2-star rating and this is a 3-star rating. This is basically before I jump the exposure to change on my camera, and this is after. Now look at this, when I'm gonna copy the settings from the photo before, it gets a lot brighter. Why? Because I increased. Look, here I am at shutter speed of 1/25th, and there I was at 160. 160 is faster than 1/25th. So 1/25th being longer, there is more light coming, so the whole scene is brighter. I don't want that because that's going to make a jump in light. Now here's the trick. Select, go back on the 2-star photo, press Command and click on the 3-star photo. So now you've got both photos selected, but the one which is highlighted, the one you're seeing, is the one on the left, the 2-star photo. And then go into settings, match total exposure. Now this is magic. Check this out. So now, and this is how we correct the jumps in, you know, as we go darker. Now check this out. The one that's after, which is 1/25th of a second, has the same correction, but it's not brighter anymore. We match the exposure. So now, what I need to do is take this one, the one we just matched exposure on, press Command-Shift-C to get these settings into memory, and I go to the next thing. My next thing is again a keyframe, so Command-Shift-V. So I'm going to copy that into that. It's getting dark, a bit too dark, so maybe I will brighten up a little bit that scene. Okay. Okay, not too much, not too much. It still needs to be dark because we are getting to darkness. My whole idea was to show Paris by night. Okay, then Command-Shift-C because I changed something, so I copy. And now I go into the next, I only have 2 keyframes, see 2 and 3 stars, 2 and 3 stars. And this time I'm gonna press Command-Shift-V and you will see this one will be brighter again, much brighter. We don't want that, it's not gonna be real. So let's select both photos, okay? By pressing the Command key, making sure that we are viewing the one on the left, the 2-star, going to settings, match total exposure. Okay, now we match the total exposure on this one, which is cool. And now this one I'm going to press Command-Shift-C to copy the settings of this one, and I'm going to put it on the last photo, Command-Shift-V. Now this one is getting really dark, it's the last photo, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit. I want to make it darker. I want to make it darker than this one, you know, so I'm eyeballing it darker, but not that dark, you know, come on. Come on. It's not possible. Okay, I kind of like that. It's a bit dark. Again. No, This is gonna be brighter than this. You know, one thing you can do is, which is funny, you can do the match total exposure between these two. So settings, match total exposure, to make sure the last one matches the exposure of this one. Oh, no, it didn't do a good job there. I really have to brighten up this one. Okay, let's brighten it up, but less than this one. We want to finish in the night. Okay, I'm gonna go maybe something like that. Yeah, dark, because this is number what, 273, and this is 420. So yeah, it's getting really dark. Okay, so anyway, so now we don't have any more jumps. You know, we're starting, you know, bright, and we're getting into the night, and we're getting into the night, and we're getting into the night, you know. So I kind of like that. So now let's go back into the grid mode, because Gunther says it's better to do that in grid mode. Let's Command A to select everything. So now we have retouched all our photos with keyframes. So let's write what we have done. So we go to metadata, sorry, and save metadata to file. So now we are writing just this, 7 files. Let's go back in time-lapse and let's reload. So now we are going to load this 7 keyframe, which is going to basically tell the software, you know, how to make the exposure linear the whole way. So I'm almost there. It's reloading everything, but there's only 7 keyframes which have changed. And now 2 buttons which are magic. First, auto transition. This is going to make the whole thing more on a gradient basis. And then deflicker, because I have a bit of flickering on this video for some reason, even though I shot manual. It's going to make sure everything is kind of smooth. Okay, so now all we need is, we just follow the buttons. We click XMP save, which is basically now going to save. This sequence already has been deflickered. Do you want to remove the existing deflicker? Recommended, yes, okay. So we save this. So now I go back into Lightroom. I take out my filter, so I get all the photos back. I go back into the grid mode. Please. I know you're a bit slow, Lightroom, but please, come on. I want the, oh, I am already in the grid view, I'm sorry. Command A, and right click, metadata, read metadata from files. Because now, because we click the smooth transition, LR Time-lapse did a smooth transition between all that keyframes, and we should get a better exposure. So now it's going to read all the XMP metadata, and it's going to change, as you can see here. I'm going to go into the slideshow mode, and I'm going to export this as a 25 frames per second time lapse. Just in a second. All you need to do is wait for this to come the whole way to 100. Okay, task completed. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, slideshow. Let's go into the slideshow module. And let's go into, oh yeah, let's make it 30 frames per second. That's cool. Export video. And I'm going to export it in full HD, 1980 by 1020, full HD video. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. I love this. Oh, by the way, for the ones going to Paris, okay, let me put this on my desktop. I'm going to call this Roof Paris. Roof, it's like this. Okay, I'm going to go full HD. So here I'm at 30 frames per second. So make sure you go 30 frames per second. Okay, Roof Paris, export. And now Lightroom is going to do its magic, which is going to take probably around 10 minutes. So just before I leave, this is the view of Paris from the Galeries Lafayette, the big department store. If you go in that department store, you can go, there's a coffee with a big opening, and you have this view of Paris. So if you come to Paris, check it out. It's beautiful. Okay, let me pause this, and we come back when it's time-lapsed done. All right, guys, so here is the result. So it's kind of nice. You see, we see that Paris is going into darkness. Oh, it's going up a bit there, but that's because I must have messed up a bit the... But overall, it's pretty cool, you see. And so there's no flickering, and we are really getting into the darkness. Let me show it to you again. And yeah, I love it. I love that view. I love how the roof are going. I love the smoke coming out here. You know how the Eiffel Tower goes on. I love time-lapse. I really love it. And that's 30 frames per second. And it's about, it's how long? It's about 13 seconds long. So there you have it. That's the holy grail workflow. And let's get back to the studio. Okay guys, so I hope you liked that tutorial. This week's inspiration is the book Time-lapse Shooting and Processing from Gunther Wegner. It's a great book. I bought it, I read it. I really urge you to read it, to buy software. If you're serious about time-lapse, he really has the best software and the best book about it that I've seen anywhere. So please check it out. Okay, at this end of this video, you will get 3 links. A link to subscribe to my channel, so you get this weekly free podcast. Please do so. A link to my paid tutorials, which I invite you to check out and purchase. It helps support this tutorial. And last but not least, you also get last week's episode. So goodbye and check out the end of the video.